Welcome to the Niche Pursuits Podcast. Are you ready to discover some niche business ideas that actually work? Well, it's time for a motivational kick to jumpstart your next big idea. Here's your host, Spencer Haas.
Hey everyone, welcome to the Niche Pursuits Podcast. I'm your host, Spencer Haas from nichepursuits.com. And I also have my co-host with me here, Perrin. Perrin, how you doing?
Pretty good. How's it going, everybody?
Awesome. I'm sure everybody is doing good because they're listening to the Niche Pursuits Podcast.
That's right.
So hopefully it puts everybody in a good mood, right?
That's right.
So I know it does for me because I get to talk about not only what's going on in my business, but I know as you and I talk, Perrin, we strategize a little bit and come up with new ideas as well. So I enjoy doing the podcast.
Yeah, totally. It's super fun. Fun every time.
Absolutely, and you never know what to expect. We like to shoot from the hip a little bit, which is kind of what we're doing here today. We are going to be reviewing a recent blog post that I wrote, but then, as I mentioned, we're going to strategize, and that could take the discussion a different direction. But we do have a roadmap that we want to follow, and that basically is that I want to go over an income report for the month of June for two particular sites that I purchased at the beginning of the year. And if you've been listening to the podcast, I think this is the third time I've reviewed the income on the podcast itself. But what is more exciting that we'll share in the second half of the podcast is a new authority project that we have planned that we're going to get started here in the next couple of weeks, basically. So with that, let's jump right into the income report for the month of June.
Yeah, let's do it.
So I purchased two sites in January of this year as a way for me to learn about purchasing sites and to see if I could grow the revenue of those sites, with the idea being that either I would just keep that for the added revenue or sell those towards the end of the year. And so I've shared those income reports for the last few months. In May, the last time I shared the income report, the numbers were down on both of the sites. So it was kind of a bummer report that I had to give. But the good news is that the income is up, at least on one of the sites, by quite a bit. And fairly good news overall for the two sites. So the first one is an Adsense site that I bought for about $5,000, and it was earning back in January about $350. In May, the income went down to $271. And so I've been trying to get it back up to that 300 plus range for a few months now. And it did that. In the month of June, the site earned $325.54, and that can be mostly attributed to the amount of traffic, the increased traffic. I saw a nice increase in rank around mid-May within Google. And so, nothing really that we did differently other than we had done some consistent link building and added some new articles. So I think that helped. But somewhere around mid-May, eventually Google decided, you know what, this is a site that I love. And so we saw a nice jump in rank, and the traffic was just consistently higher in June, which led to the, $50 in increased earnings, which doesn't sound like a ton. We're talking about $50, right? But for a site that was making $271, to have a $50 increase, that is, so let's do some quick math here, right? What would that be in percentage increase? Let's see, am I doing that wrong? Anyways, it's a nice percentage increase. Apparently, I can't use my calculator on the fly.
That'd be 15%.
There you go.
Yeah. You're welcome.
I fat fingered my calculator, I think, there. So
a nice I mean, over the course of a month, to have your profits increase by 15% is good for any business, even if it's a small one.
Yep. Absolutely. Yeah, so a nice percentage increase. It is small numbers, but I'm taking it all with the perspective that this is to be a learning experience, and which it has been. Learned quite a bit. And so let me just quickly give the final numbers for this, and then I'll give the final numbers for the other one. So since I purchased the site in January, this site has now earned $1,489.02. So if you
And what'd you buy it for?
So I bought it for $5,000. So in hard numbers, that leaves me with a net loss of $3,510, which sounds bad, I guess, but you can clearly see that I'm making that up. And if I were to sell that site today based on $325 in earnings, multiplied by 20 times, which is what the Empire Flippers sell their sites for, that's about $6,500, so that I could sell it for potentially.
Plus the $1,500 or so you've already made.
Exactly. So, if I were to sell it, I would have a nice profit of a few $1,000s. So that's good news. I'm still working on crossing that actual profit line, but pretty good recurring income that now I'm not doing a whole lot to earn.
Yeah.
So the next site is the Pinterest site that I've talked about. It gets almost all of its traffic from Pinterest. In the month of June, I had almost 62,000 visitors to the site, or sessions, I guess I should say, according to Google Analytics. The earnings were basically flat. It was down $5. It earned $239.28. But again, I'm happy with basically flatline earnings here. As I discussed last month, I'm really probably more interested in just selling this site.
Yeah.
I'm not going to focus on it. I don't think I can increase its earnings by 10 times. I paid $2,100 for the site. In total, since I bought it, it's now earned about $1,250. So I'm actually pretty close to turning a profit. Within a couple of months, I'll be there, where I'm actually making real dollars in the bank account. Yeah. But I could sell it for potentially $4,800 today, just based on its earnings, and so that would put me nicely in the profit, in the green there, if I were to do that today. So any thoughts that you want to add on these sites, Perrin?
No, only that despite how frustrating the Pinterest site was to us, it still seems to be a good investment. And with the other site, we saw a dip, but we just were very consistent with the things that we kind of know work, which is a few more links to a few more pieces of content. And we didn't get very aggressive at all on that site, but
right.
We saw it kind of pull back up to a more sustainable level. But they're both good case studies that show that buying some web properties and hanging on to them can be pretty profitable. Because once these both cross the profit lines, you could sell them for $10,000 having done relatively little work.
Yep. Yeah, that is something that we talked about quite a bit, is just the business model of buying and holding sites. It's like buying cash flow, almost like just buying real property, buying homes and renting those out, and getting the cash flow from that. People do that all the time. I mean, that's huge business, getting rental income. And buying virtual property is very similar to that. Yeah. And as long as these sites continue to earn, even for just a few more months, I can turn around and sell these for a nice profit. If I just continue to earn the cash flow, I mean, it's a much, much higher return on my money than if I were to buy a house and rent that out. At least where I'm at, if I were to buy a house for $200,000, I could rent that property out for, I don't know, $1,500 or something a month.
Mm-hmm.
which is nice, but you figure I spent $2,000 and I'm getting almost $250 a month in recurring revenue. You know, the amount of investment I made for these websites and the cash flow that they're returning is humongous compared to real estate.
Yeah, and maybe that's worth talking about, because you and I had a pretty good conversation, I think it was yesterday, about how feasible this business model is and kind of the pros and cons. And this is our first attempt at it, and I think we've kind of learned some lessons. So if you are going to buy sites, you can do a bunch of different stuff with them, right? You can buy them and improve them, which is what we tried to do, and it was moderately successful, not super successful as we had hoped, but you can sort of buy them and improve them. You can buy them and hang on to them, which is basically like buying cash flow. And then you could even potentially use that cash flow to buy more sites.
Right.
So it's sort of a self-feeding business, and eventually you are just building up the revenue for your site. Or you can buy them and flip them, which is something that a lot of people do. You can try to buy towards the 10 times monthly multiple price point and then sell at the 20 times multiple price point. So there's lots of different things you can do. The downside, of course, is that websites are much riskier than something like real estate. You never know when Google is going to slap something, but the upsides, of course, are that the return is really high and the barrier to entry is really low.
Definitely, and that is worth mentioning. The risk here is significantly higher than real estate and other investments that people are familiar with. So I want to be very clear there. This is not a guaranteed thing. You can definitely wake up tomorrow and have your income completely gone. That does happen with websites. So the risk is huge as far as how much earnings can fluctuate, but the monetary risk, the amount that you're willing to pay, usually is much less. I'm not going to spend $200,000 usually on a website or something. And it's for everybody to determine what's within their risk tolerance and their ability to spend. One of the lessons that we learned from these sites is just the amount of effort it takes to improve a small site is about the same amount of effort for a huge site.
Yeah.
And so I decided, next time I buy a site, I'm not going to buy something that only makes $250 or $350 a month. I want something much, much bigger. And actually I did that. About a month and a half ago, I was able to get in contact with a reader from Niche Pursuits who was interested in selling one of their sites. I was able to just negotiate via email and Skype. We actually did a call and talked things over. And I bought a site for a really, really good price. I'm not going to go into the specific numbers, but it definitely was a good multiple that I bought it at. And it was a much bigger site. It was earning, when I bought it, I think it was either $1,800 or $1,900 the month before I bought it. The first full month now, which was June, from when I owned the site, it earned about $2,300. So
yeah. It's
a growing site. Something that's earning more than $2,000 in a month is definitely what I'm more interested in than $200 or $300. So now I've gone out and I've bought a larger site earning $2,300 a month. I feel much better about putting more time and effort into this type of property.
Yeah, but that's a really good point. It really does take the same time and effort, and in most cases money, to improve a big site as it does a small site. So I think for anybody who's looking to get into this, including myself personally, because my blogs are doing fairly well and I have some capital to play with.
Nice.
It kind of, it makes more sense to buy something that's bigger if you feel comfortable with the risk, So, and it's still a leap to take for someone like me in my position where, my blogs are getting successful, but still, prices in the 5 figures are scary to me. Right. Even if the site looks good and I might make it back in 10 months or 12 months or something, it's still quite a leap, So But it's definitely something to keep in mind is looking at these sites from a resources perspective. If you're going to spend 15 hours and $1,000 to improve a site, would you rather do that on a site that's making $1,000 a month or a couple hundred?
Mm-hmm. And the other thing to consider is the cost of what it would take to build a site from scratch on your own versus buying a web property. So, from scratch on your own, clearly it's going to be cheaper. Let's say, so a site earning $1,000 a month at 20 times earnings would cost $20,000, or 10 times earnings would be $10,000. So, just depending on where you buy it, you can probably get a site earning $1,000 a month between $10,000 and $20,000. Let's just say $15,000. Okay.
Uh-huh.
You could do that. You get the guaranteed income right away. You have a web property that is off to the races.
Yep.
Or you could take $15,000 and invest it in building websites from scratch. You can do a lot with $15,000. That's a lot of content, a lot of link building, really great designs, and everything. You can certainly build up a site that earns $1,000 a month for $15,000, but it's not a guaranteed thing. It takes a lot of time. It's probably going to be 6 months before the site's up and ranking and earning that kind of money. And just other factors that come into play. So you have to look at it both ways. The monetary investment is much lower if you build from scratch, but the guaranteed income, isn't there. There's no, guarantee that site will ever pan out.
Yeah, and so there's going to be a resources decision that people have to make if they're deciding between one or the other. Because if you build a site from scratch, your investment's really low. I mean, I built a Penny Shaved, and it earns over $1,000 a month. My investment was, $700 at first.
Right.
I've invested more, but that was kind of what I spent to build it. But my time investment was huge. It was 120 hours of my own time and several months of watching it sit there before Google decided to create a sandbox. So now if you want to create a site from scratch, you could do it for $1,000 or even $2,000, which is much less money, but you're going to spend 6 or 7 or even 8 months now,
right,
to see it come. So your time resource investment is really huge. If you want to buy a site, you can invest basically no time, but the monetary investment is going to be a lot bigger. Also, there's going to be different types of risk, With building a site, you have to rely on your own skills. It may or may not work, and you're going to have to wait a long time to see if it does work. But if you buy a site, you don't know what the other person has done. There could be some weird code on the back end. There could be links that haven't shown up yet, all kinds of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a bunch of decisions, and they're both kind of different types of business models, but they're both attractive in different ways.
Yeah, and so because of my recent buying sites, I bought 3 now this year, I'm a little more intrigued with the potential of what I could do, just looking at what I could sell these sites for, or just building up a nice monthly recurring revenue from these sites, adding them to my portfolio. I'm considering doing some more of that and just delving into this business model a little bit more. So if anybody's out there listening to the podcast and you have a site that's earning, $1,000 a month or more, and you're interested in selling that site, please contact me. I'm interested in taking a look. I can't make any guarantees, but go over to nichepursuits.com/contact. I have a contact page there, and you can get in touch, email me, and we can start a discussion. I'd love to take a look.
Yeah, and as I started looking into that business model more, that's one of the tough things is finding a quality site to buy. You have to sift through a lot of sites and do a lot of research on the ones that looked passable before you kind of take the leap. And I spent a whole day on Flippo last weekend looking at sites, trying to decide or kind of sort of feel my way around this potential business model. Mm-hmm. And it's tough. There's so many crappy sites out there and some very bad sellers out there. So to find the diamond in the rough is not an easy thing. So yeah, definitely let us know if you have a site that you want to sell.
Yep. Absolutely. And so let's move on to the second half of our discussion here.
Yep.
So I mentioned early on that we are considering starting, well, not considering, we've decided we are starting a new authority project.
Yes.
And this is a little bit different than what we've been doing in the past. So we've been out building niche sites, and really the idea all along with these niche sites has been to start them small. You know, they start with 15 to 20 pages or maybe 30 pages of content, original articles. But for the most part, after that, you know, we do some minor link building. You know, with our sites that are 6 months old, we might be adding 5 or 10 new articles a month to those. And we do hope to grow those, but the high-end goal for most of them is, you know, we want them to make $500 a month or maybe $1,000 a month.
Yeah.
That's kind of what we've been looking to do, and because we have a dozen of those sites, you know, it adds up to a nice income.
Mm-hmm.
But as we've been doing this, we've been figuring out, you know, it is a lot of work. Perrin, a ton of your time is gone between, you know, this site, site A, site B, site C, you know, 10 different sites, building links for each site, figuring out content strategy for each site, managing authors for all of those. It takes a ton of time and effort. And we just decided, you know what? Let's put all of our, or nearly all of our time and money into one large site that we hope to grow into something huge. You know, and when I say huge, I mean I don't mean $1,000 or $2,000 a month. You know, I want, well, sky's the limit, right? You know,
Yeah.
I want certainly 6 figures.
Yeah.
I want something even larger than that. You know, so will I get there? I don't know. But instead of having the ultimate goal being $500 or $1,000 a month, I want a site that, you know, down the road could do $30, $40, $100,000 a month. You know, a big site that has huge potential.
Yeah, and part of it was for exactly that reason that you just mentioned and that we discussed earlier, is that, you know, we're spending so much time doing the same stuff to all these small sites, link building and content. If we focus that energy on one larger site, we can do it at the same velocity, just much better, you know? And we can increase the volume. So it just kind of makes sense from an energy and resources and monetary and also just an excitement perspective, you know. So, and it allows us to do lots of different things. I'm sure we're going to talk about, you know, trying to go after different traffic sources and link sources, but it allows us to be a lot more agile with the development of the site as a business, as opposed to having 12 sites and, you know, basically the only thing we can afford to do with my time and your money is adding a couple links and a couple pieces of content to each one.
Right. Yep, absolutely. And we also, of course, had our podcast interview with Hayden Miyamoto last week that we published. And, you know, we had already been talking about it before we interviewed with Hayden, but this is, you know, a perfect follow-up podcast, if you will. You know, Hayden talked about his big finance site that he's built up to $10,000 a month and kind of his content strategy and some of the things that he's doing there that are very interesting. And we've also talked with other people that have built large web properties. And part of the shift in our thinking has been, of course, because of Google in a way. Back in the day, 2-3 years ago, you could build up lots of little niche sites. You could buy the exact match domain and have it ranking very quickly within a month or two, and the return was almost instantaneous, and a site that was only earning $50 a month was profitable, you know, if you built out 50 or 60 of them. And you know, you could have a great income.
Yep.
And so it's been a long, slow transition away from that model ever since Google has been coming out with the Panda and the Penguin updates and the Sandbox and the EMD updates. All of these updates have just made it harder and harder to build a small site and make it rank really quickly.
Yeah.
And so because of those changes, and also because of the vision, now that we want something much larger, we've decided we're going to go into a large market, some market where we know there's a lot of traffic. We see other successful sites. We know there's a lot of money with advertisers and other things, and just huge potential for the amount of content with long tail keywords and other things that we can, put up on the site and hopefully do very well.
Yeah, and it's also mindset shift, and I don't want to talk too much on it because I feel like we've kind of beat this horse to death in the last couple podcast episodes, but like our mindset, I mean, even as early as January when I was hired, was just pump out niche sites because they're working and it seems easy to create a $500 a month niche site. But
and when we say pump out, it really was still 2 a month maybe, right?
2 a month, yeah. I mean, we were shooting for like 20 or 30 by the end of the year,
right? And
they would still be good and high quality. Definitely not like the 5-page sites, more like 15 or 20 pages and solid links and that kind of thing, which I guess is more in the middle. But we've kind of moved away from just building small web properties into a mindset of creating sustainable, defensible, large businesses. Because when I think about this big site that we're trying to build, I don't even think of it as a site. I think of it as a company that will eventually have employees. You know what I mean?
Right.
And so it's kind of that mindset shift away from just building web properties on our own and, getting a couple of dollars from Google into an actual company that's providing value in all different kinds of ways and generating revenue in all kinds of different ways.
Yep, absolutely. And so let's go into how our strategy is a little bit different from a small niche site versus what we're doing now. I will just maybe back up and say there are some similarities. So the similarities are really that the keyword strategy is very, very similar. In a way. We're still going to be doing keyword research to look for that low competition within Google and looking for keywords that get search volume, as low as maybe just a couple hundred times a month on up to 1,500, 2,000, maybe a little bit higher, but sort of in that range of, 200 to 1,500 searches per month. That lower search volume, those longer tailed keywords is still what we're going to be targeting, but instead of creating new sites to target all these different topics, these different keywords, they're all going onto one site and they're all going to have one unifying theme. So if I can just use Hayden's example, finance is his overall umbrella. Under that finance niche, there's everything ranging from personal finance, mortgages, credit cards, to business finances and insurance, and thousands and thousands of different keywords and articles that they could target. So we're going in a much broader niche similar to that. We're not in the finance niche, but think of something like that. It's a broader niche, and we're going to easily be able to come up with thousands of different keywords all within that sort of long tail range that I mentioned. So that's the similarity.
Yeah, and it's important too because I really feel like it's one of the things that is going to differentiate our strategy. Like I don't feel like I'm the best link builder in the world. I don't even feel like I'm the best writer in the world. What I feel like I can do, or we can do combined better than anybody else, is keyword research.
Totally.
And I feel like making our way into a big, relatively competitive market is kind of difficult, but based on the research we've already done, we really think we can elbow our way in there only because we think we're going to be doing it better than everybody else.
Yeah, and also what is kind of interesting is the types of keywords that we're finding right now. I actually have built a site or two on similar keywords.
Me too, yeah.
And I've been able to rank for those, those particular sites. So it's a super competitive market. It's a huge market that we're going into, but you're exactly right. I think we're good enough at keyword research, and we know the types of things that we can rank for, that I have no doubt that we'll be able to do that.
Yeah.
And so that's the good thing. What's a little bit different is the content strategy itself. So instead of 15 to 30 articles, we're going to be doing, at least starting off, one article a day that's keyword focused. And the article's not going to be, a 500 to 1,000 word article. We're going to start with much larger articles. We're talking 2,000 to 3,000 words, most of them 3,000 words plus. Very large, in-depth, hopefully super, super useful content that we can put up there. And then in addition to those keyword articles, we're also going to be doing shorter news articles each day, a couple of news items within our particular niche. So 3 to 4 articles probably each and every day is going to be going on our site. After just a month, there will be easily 100 articles up there, and many of them being very, very long and in-depth.
Yeah, and I think it's also worth mentioning that these articles also don't just target one keyword. So when we are writing these articles, we're going to have a keyword that came up in our research that we want to target, but we're going to use that keyword to find a bunch of related or LSI keywords.
Right.
So, so how the article looks is like our title is the main keyword. Every subheading is going to be a related keyword or close. So it'll have related keywords plus subheadings that just make sense for the article. And under every one of those subheadings, we're going to have a couple phrases that are LSI phrases that we are going to include. And the idea is that in the end, we'll create a 3,000 word article, and when Google sees it, it will have no doubt about what that article is about, which hopefully will help us rank a lot better. And then with the shorter articles, the idea is to get in Google News because the traffic is so good there. It's not easy, and it's kind of hard to get your site in there, but once you do, the traffic is good and requires relatively little work. So.
Yep. And so that is the other part of the strategy that's a little bit different is our traffic sources that you mentioned. Never before have we really tried to get into Google or Yahoo News. Now that's definitely going to be a focus. So we're not just relying on natural search engine traffic, but that news traffic is a little bit different. We're going to get our site in Google, Yahoo News, other places maybe that publish news articles. And because we're going to be focusing so much time, we'll have the ability to go after other traffic sources like social media, Twitter and Facebook and other places. Also Kindle ebooks, which maybe we can talk about here in a little bit. But then referrals from other websites. We're going to reach out to other webmasters and hopefully get mentions on their blogs or maybe do guest posting. But more referrals because we're going to be reaching out. We're going to build an email list, and so we'll be able to do email marketing and probably even paid advertising. Maybe we'll do some paid email marketing or paid ads just to get traffic from other places. So the traffic sources are going to be different, more well-rounded, and then hopefully the revenue itself will be more diversified. So it won't just be Google AdSense or Amazon. There certainly will be CPA offers and other either affiliate products, or we can sell our own products. We've got some of our own ideas that eventually we can come up with and monetize it ourselves. So much big picture things that we could do revenue wise as well.
Yeah, I mean, and that's kind of our umbrella strategy for the whole site is to diversify everything.
Right.
So we're making big efforts and we are planning extensively to diversify traffic, revenue, and links because we want this to be a very long-term, very big, very profitable, and very defensible business. And you can't do that if you are only getting traffic from Google and only selling on one affiliate network,
Yep.
So our focus for sure is to diversify everything as much as we can insofar as it makes sense from a resources perspective. So we're going to be going after all different kinds of links, but we definitely have like 2 or 3 or 4 types of links that we're going to be really aggressively going after. Same with revenue and traffic.
Yeah, so let's jump into that. As you mentioned, we do want to be different in our link building strategy. Because this is something that hopefully, in a year or two is going to be much, much larger, we're going to put a little bit more effort into our link building and not use some of the quick and easy strategies maybe that we've used in the past. So we're definitely looking at doing more white hat link building, if you will, more reaching out and networking within the community, and there's all kinds of other ways that you can do white hat link building, but really in a nutshell, we're going to be trying to take more of an authoritative approach where we're actually garnering links more naturally, getting well known within the community, being active either on social media or other places, and hopefully the links will come. We're definitely going to be taking an active approach, and yes, we'll probably still take some low-hanging fruit type links, whether that's blog comments or PBNs or other ways, but the overall percentage of that lower hanging fruit will be much lower, just meaning that we're going after the more authoritative links, and hopefully that'll be a larger percentage of our link building as a whole.
Yeah, the biggest chunk of that link building pie is going to be some sort of relationship based link,
right?
Ideally, which obviously takes more time. So whether it's making friends with a similar organization, or making friends with a reporter, or setting up some sort of scholarship or something. I mean, we are looking mostly at stuff where we are building relationships with other organizations and, kind of mutually benefiting each other, or benefiting their audiences somehow. So, because that's the most white hat you can get, is getting on authoritative sites that are really relevant in your market, So that's kind of what the biggest piece of the pie is, but we're definitely doing things besides that and PBNs as well, working at some of the really high directories and maybe some guest posting and some link baiting and some of the easier white hat links like infographic sharing and things like that.
Right.
And overall, we're just going to test a whole bunch of stuff and see what's most profitable. But the strategy right now is to go after those relationships.
Yeah, and really what's great about having a larger site is that you can do those things. With the smaller sites, we have 10 or 12 of those that we're focusing on. It's just impossible for us to go out and make good relationships in 10 or 12 different markets.
Yeah.
You just can't do it. There's not enough time in the day. You can try to hire people and do different things, but you can do so much more if you're focused on one particular market. And so that's what we're hoping, is that as we focus on this day in and day out, we're going to find those opportunities that we wouldn't find if we were, kind of doing things more passively, if you will. So
yeah, and
mm-hmm.
It's easier with a big authoritative site. Like if you've got a 15-page site, and you try to reach out to somebody and say, hey, I'm the webmaster at suchandsuch.com. Would you like to do this cool thing? And then go over and they go, cool 10-page blogspot.com blog, man. Like, they don't care. But if you've got a big authoritative site and tons of traffic and things like that, then it's much easier to talk to higher level companies.
Yep, I couldn't agree more. And so that's the overall strategy. Where we're at right now, it's all talk at this point, right? We're early on in our stages. We've got the domain, we've got the theme figured out, and we've actually started writing the content. We found lots and lots of keywords already, so the plan's in place. We're just about ready to launch the site live. It's very early on, so I'm sure we'll be talking more and more about this site in future podcasts and, of course, within the blog posts over at nichepursuits.com. But I just felt like it was important that I share what this new project was all about that Perrin and I are working on, so people can kind of know where our state of mind is and hear our argument as to maybe why you want to start building a larger site versus just lots of little sites. And maybe that is big news for a lot of people that have listened to my story and my podcast for a long time. because of course my background is, I built hundreds of small niche sites. That's how I made my money. That's just how it was. And I'm grateful for those days, because that gave me a really nice nest egg where I've been able to evolve and grow my business to the point where it's at now, where I have the ability to hopefully build something much larger and grow from there. So
Yeah, I think that really touches on something that people were saying in the comments too. Like, I think the general feeling after the blog post was, oh no, is Spencer not going to be building niche sites? The answer is that niche sites are still relevant, and you can still build them, and they're a really great way to learn. The tactics are still relevant. We are going to be using those tactics to, get the site started. And also, if you have a successful small site, you can just grow that into a big site. That's what I'm trying to do with my own blog.
Yep.
So
absolutely. And so, and people have asked in the comments, as you mentioned, well, what kind of site should I build now? They're kind of confused. And so, just as you mentioned, niche sites are a great place to get started. They really are. If you've never built a site before and this is all new to you, I would still recommend doing some basic keyword research, finding a niche that you feel you can rank for, build 1 or 2 sites max, and work on them for 6 months and learn the ropes, see what happens, make all the mistakes in the book, and hopefully you get a little bit of money in your pocket at that point. And if you decide you want to invest more time and more money into a larger project, do it at that point. Or grow one of your existing sites that had some great traction, grow it into something larger. That's what I'd recommend. Start small, learn the ropes. Once you have the confidence and the know-how and maybe a little bit of money, at least my argument is now, there's really no better way to go than to build a large web property.
Yeah, but can you still build small sites? Yeah, we've got 10 of them, and they're all doing a couple $100 a month.
Yeah. Yep, absolutely. And so it is a great way to go, and there's a business there. So if people still want to do that, that's fine. I may still be buying and selling some of those smaller ones. I don't know. As I mentioned, I'll get into the website flipping perhaps a bit more, but overall, that's our thoughts. If you want to stop by and read the blog post itself, you can go over to nichepursuits.com. It's the June income report there, and you can read all of the great comments there and participate. But that's about it for this podcast. Perrin, do you have anything else that you'd like to share today?
No, I don't think so. That's it for me.
All right. I think that's about it. I did just recently finish a book.
Me too.
I will probably I'm actually thinking of writing a full book review on this one. It's called Quiet, The Power of Introverts in a World That Can't Stop Talking.
Awesome.
It was really, really good. I enjoyed it a lot, so I may actually do a full blog post on it. So for today, I'll just say it's a really good book. Maybe it's a shocker for people. I have a podcast and I have a blog and I'm out there a lot, but I would classify myself as an introvert according to the tests in the book.
Oh yeah, me too, big time.
Yeah, and it's okay. The book was just very good. I'll let people read it for themselves. There's a lot of opinions in the world about how people should be, whether they're extroverts or introverts. But kind of the results speak for themselves, I guess, is all I'll say.
That's right.
Yep. So.
Yeah, I actually am reading one as well.
What book are you reading?
I'm reading a book called Early Retirement Extreme by Jacob Lund Fisker.
Okay.
And it's basically outlines a philosophy and a plan for retiring in your 20s and 30s, or if you're already 30 and you're just reading the book, then hopefully by 40.
Nice.
Right? But the idea is that you shouldn't just focus on making more money, that you can increase your net income in 2 ways, which is basically by making more money or by spending a lot less money. So he retired, I think, at 39 one or something, and it was because he reduced his spending to like a quarter of what the average is.
Wow.
And so it's kind of a whole philosophy that's like, moving away from being a consumer and towards being a producer,
Mm-hmm.
but also like learning skills so you can do stuff yourself, and then investing in different types of funds that have high yields and can support you if you just save 75% of your salary for a couple years, which is really cool. So it's a really, really interesting book, and I highly recommend it. A similar blog is Mr. Money Mustache, which is highly entertaining and the same kind of philosophy. So anybody interested in like personal finance stuff, I think would really dig it.
Yeah, that sounds really good. I might have to read that.
Yeah, it's really, really good.
So we will go ahead and link to both the books we mentioned in the show notes, so people can be sure to get those if they want. But other than that, that's all we got today. If you enjoyed the podcast, as always, you can go over to iTunes and leave a rating or review. And you can do that at nichepursuits.com/iTunes. I appreciate everybody listening in, and best of luck in your business.